A few years ago, I met a driver who had reached 550,000 kilometers in his 2003 Honda Accord. It wasn't a special car. It didn't have exotic modifications or have been pampered in luxury workshops. It was simply a family sedan that still ran like it was half its age. When I asked him what his secret was, I expected to hear something technical, some magic formula or a miracle product. But his answer was so simple it baffled me. Routines. Small routines he repeated without fail, month after month, year after year. Most people think that cars that reach such mileage do so by luck, because they're from a reliable brand, or because they came from the factory in good condition. But the truth is different. Any car can go far if the driver understands that longevity isn't a matter of chance, it's discipline. Today you're going to discover 13 habits that separate cars that die prematurely from those that become rolling legends. They aren't expensive tricks or complex repairs. They're simply consistent decisions that, applied day after day, build something extraordinary. And I'll tell you in advance that the last 3 habits on this list are the least known but have the greatest impact on the lifespan of any vehicle. Respect warm-up times without overdoing it. There's a deeply ingrained myth among drivers that letting the engine run for 10 minutes before driving off is taking care of the car. And it's exactly the opposite. Modern engines are designed to reach their operating temperature while moving, not stationary. When you let the engine idle for that long when cold, what happens is that the unburned gasoline starts to run down the cylinder walls, carrying with it the thin film of oil that should be protecting them. It's like running wet sandpaper over a delicate surface. The damage is gradual, but cumulative. I've spoken with mechanics who have opened engines with barely 80,000 kilometers and found scored cylinder walls, worn piston rings, and lost compression, all because the owner had the habit of warming up the car every morning for ages. The correct method is simple and efficient. Start the engine, wait 20 to 30 seconds for the oil to circulate minimally, and then drive gently for the first 2 or 3 kilometers. During this time, the engine reaches its ideal operating temperature much faster than if it were idle. The benefits are immediate: less internal wear, better lubrication from the start, and lower fuel consumption. Cars that follow this routine reach 200,000 kilometers with near-perfect compression, while those that overheat accumulate carbon deposits, residue, and premature wear. Ironically, many believe they are protecting their engine when in reality they are slowly killing it. Never ignore dashboard warning lights. The dashboard of a modern car is its way of talking to you. Every light that illuminates is a specific message, a warning designed to prompt you to act before something becomes a disaster. But there's a dangerous tendency among drivers to simply ignore these lights, especially if the car continues to run seemingly normally. The check engine light, for example, can indicate anything from a dirty oxygen sensor to a serious problem in the fuel injection system. Ignoring it for weeks or months can transform a €50 repair into a €1,500 one. I've known cases of drivers who ignored the temperature light thinking it was a sensor failure, when in reality the engine was overheating. The result? A warped cylinder head, a blown head gasket, and a practically dead engine. The oil light is another one that many underestimate. If it comes on while you're driving, it means the oil pressure has dropped below the safe minimum. Continuing to drive in those conditions can seize the engine in a matter of minutes, turning a problem that perhaps only required adding oil into a catastrophe costing several €1,000s. Drivers who rack up extremely high mileage have one thing in common. At the slightest warning light, they act immediately. They don't procrastinate. They don't wait to see if it goes off on its own. They don't downplay it. They take the car for an OBD2 diagnostic, identify the error code, and fix it right away. That speed is the difference between a car that lasts for decades and one that dies prematurely. And the best part is that many problems detected early are inexpensive to fix. It's when you ignore them that they become catastrophic, driving in efficient RPM ranges. If you look at your car's tachometer, you've probably noticed a differently marked zone, sometimes green or with a line indicating a specific range. This range isn't just for show, it's the optimal point where the engine operates with maximum efficiency, minimum wear, and the best balance between power and fuel consumption. For most modern engines, this range is between 1,500 and 2,500 revolutions per minute. Constantly driving above this range, accelerating aggressively, and unnecessarily pushing the engine to high RPMs puts internal components under stress that shortens their lifespan. Pistons, connecting rods, valves, and bearings operate under high pressure and temperature, accumulating mechanical fatigue. But the opposite extreme is also harmful. Driving at excessively low RPMs, what mechanics call lugging, stresses the engine in a different but equally destructive way. Imagine trying to climb a hill in fifth gear at 40 kilometers per hour. The engine vibrates, groans, and although it seems like you're driving gently, you're actually generating internal detonations and excessive stress on the crankshaft. The perfect balance lies in maintaining enough revolutions for the engine to move the car effortlessly, but without unnecessarily revving it. Experienced drivers intuitively sense when the engine is asking for a gear change, when it's working comfortably, and when it's struggling. Developing this sensitivity is key to extending engine life, reducing fuel consumption, and keeping the entire system in harmony for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Change your oil based on your driving style, not just mileage. One of the most common mistakes is blindly following the oil change intervals in the manufacturer's manual without considering how and where the car is actually used. An engine that is primarily driven on the highway, reaching and maintaining operating temperature for hours, degrades the oil completely differently than one that only makes short trips in the city. In urban driving, the engine starts cold, travels a few kilometers without reaching optimal temperature, and then shuts off. This constantly repeated cycle causes the oil to accumulate condensation, unburned fuel, and contaminants that don't evaporate. Over time, this oil loses its lubricating properties much sooner than the manual indicates. Therefore, if your car is mainly driven in the city, you need to change the oil more frequently than recommended. A practical rule of thumb for high-mileage drivers is this: every 5,000 kilometers if you mainly drive in the city, every 7,000 if your driving is mixed, and only every 10,000 if you constantly drive on the highway. Extreme driving conditions must also be taken into account. If you live in a place with intense heat, extreme cold, or a lot of dust, the oil works under extra stress and needs to be changed sooner. A simple visual inspection can give you clues. If the oil is very dark, thick, or smells burnt before reaching the recommended interval, it's time to change it. This small investment, 40 or 50 euros each time, is the difference between an engine that reaches 500,000 kilometers without problems and one that starts consuming oil, making strange noises, and losing compression at 150,000 kilometers. Maintaining a flawless cooling system is crucial. If there's one thing that prematurely kills engines, it's heat. The correct temperature is everything. An engine that runs even a few degrees above normal for extended periods will dramatically shorten its lifespan. That's why drivers who achieve extraordinary mileage figures treat the cooling system like a vital organ. And it's not just the radiator. The system includes the thermostat, hoses, water pump, temperature sensors, and electric fans. Each component performs a critical function. Coolant, for example, degrades over time, even if it's not immediately apparent. It loses its anti-corrosion additives and its heat transfer properties. When this happens, sludge begins to form, clogging the engine's smallest passages and creating hotspots where the metal operates at temperatures exceeding its design specifications. Hoses are another weak point. Constant heat hardens and cracks them. A hose failure on the road can drain the coolant system in minutes and leave the engine at catastrophic temperatures. That's why it's essential to perform regular visual inspections, looking for softening, cracks, or leaks. The coolant should be changed every 3 years without exception, always using the specific type recommended by the manufacturer. Mixing coolants of different colors or compositions creates chemical reactions that can form gels or precipitates that block the system. The radiator should also be cleaned externally regularly, because the accumulation of insects, leaves, and dirt reduces its ability to dissipate heat. Electric fans should be checked to ensure they activate when the temperature rises. An engine that maintains a stable temperature at all times without fluctuations or spikes is an engine that can easily last 30 years or more. Check your tire pressure religiously. Many drivers think that tire pressure only affects fuel consumption or tire wear, but the reality is that it has a direct impact on engine health and practically the entire mechanical system of the car. When tires are underinflated, rolling resistance increases dramatically. This means the engine has to work harder to move the same weight, generating more heat, more stress on the transmission, and more wear and tear with every acceleration. A car with underinflated tires can consume up to 15% more fuel without the driver understanding why. Furthermore, incorrect pressure affects the suspension and shock absorbers because they have to absorb impacts unevenly. Uneven tire wear creates vibrations that are transmitted throughout the car's structure, aging components that should last much longer. The correct pressure is specified on a sticker that is usually located on the driver's side door frame or the fuel filler cap. And it's important to always check it when the tires are cold before driving, because temperature significantly changes the pressure. This is a habit that costs absolutely nothing, takes 5 minutes once a week, and can save thousands of euros in premature wear and tear. Even the spare tire should be included in this check because when you need it, it's too late to discover it's flat. Properly inflated tires mean a less strained engine, a better handling car, and components that last as long as they should. It's one of those simple details that's almost absurd to ignore. And if these first 7 habits have already made you think about how you treat your car, get ready, because what comes next is even more critical. The following 6 habits are what truly separate an average driver from one who understands that their car can be a long-term investment. They are those little rituals that few people know about, that don't appear in the official manuals, but that make a huge difference between an engine that dies young and one that refuses to give up even after 500,000 kilometers. Clean your car's undercarriage and chassis regularly. Corrosion is the most silent killer in the automotive world. It makes no noise, doesn't trigger warning lights, and doesn't generate vibrations. It simply advances, day after day, month after month, devouring the metal from below while the driver doesn't even suspect anything is wrong. And when the first visible hole finally appears, it's already too late. The car's structure has been irreversibly compromised. This is especially critical in areas where salt is used on roads during the winter, in coastal areas with constant salty humidity, or in industrial regions with chemical pollutants in the air. Most drivers only wash the exterior of the car to make it shine, completely ignoring the most vulnerable part, the undercarriage and chassis. That's where mud, salt, chemicals, and moisture accumulate, creating the perfect environment for rust. Wheel wells are particularly susceptible because they retain water and grime that never fully dries. I've seen cars that looked immaculate on the outside, gleaming as if they'd just rolled off the showroom floor. But when you lifted them on the hoist, the suspension arms were practically disintegrated, the brake lines corroded, and the chassis riddled with holes the size of coins. Those cars didn't die because the engine failed. They died because the structure became unsafe. The preventative procedure is simple. Pressure wash the undercarriage at least once a month. In winter, if you live in an area with salted roads, that interval should be reduced to every 2 weeks without exception. In addition, once a year it's advisable to apply specific anti-corrosion products to the undercarriage, especially in critical areas such as metal joints, weld points, and areas where water tends to accumulate. This minimal investment, which can cost less than €30 a year, extends the car's structural life by decades. Because in the end, what good is a perfect engine if the chassis is rotting from the inside? What makes corrosion especially treacherous is its exponential nature. Once the rust penetrates the first layer of protective paint and reaches the bare metal, the process accelerates dramatically. The rust not only weakens the metal, but it also expands, occupying more volume than the original metal. This generates internal pressure that erodes more paint and exposes more surface area to further attack. Avoid constantly overloading the vehicle. Unnecessary weight is a hidden enemy that most drivers don't even consider. Every extra kilogram the car carries means the engine has to work harder. The suspension suffers more stress, the brakes get hotter, and the tires wear unevenly. And the curious thing is that many cars are unnecessarily overloaded. Open the trunk of an average car and you'll find a toolkit that's never used. Boxes of forgotten items, old clothes, toys belonging to children who are now adults, a fire extinguisher that expired years ago, and who knows how many other things that are simply there because no one bothered to take them out. All that weight adds up. Every extra 10 kilograms measurably increases fuel consumption, forces the engine to generate more heat during acceleration, and constantly strains the transmission. The brakes also suffer because they have to stop more mass, generating more heat, and wearing down pads and discs faster. The suspension works at its limit, absorbing the extra weight with every bump, every curve, every braking maneuver. Tires wear unevenly because the load isn't distributed as the manufacturer designed. I've met drivers who complained that their car felt heavy, that fuel consumption had increased for no apparent reason, when the reality was that they'd been carrying around 50 kilos of useless stuff in the trunk for years. The principle followed by high-mileage drivers is simple. Only take what you need for the trip you're going to take. Nothing more. If you don't need it today, it shouldn't be in the car. Lightening the vehicle improves absolutely everything. Fuel consumption decreases, handling becomes more agile, components last longer, and the car ages more slowly. It's one of those changes that doesn't cost money. It only requires 5 minutes to empty the trunk of everything unnecessary. There's a revealing experiment that some enthusiasts have documented. They completely emptied their cars, weighed every item in the trunk, and were surprised to discover that they were carrying between 40 and 70 kilos of unnecessary things. That's equivalent to permanently carrying an invisible passenger who never gets out of the vehicle. The impact on acceleration is measurable. Every additional 100 kilos adds approximately half a second to the time from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour. Use engine braking instead of just the brake pedal. This is a driving technique that separates experienced drivers from novices. Lifting your foot off the accelerator and allowing the engine to naturally slow the vehicle is not only more efficient, but it also protects the braking system from brutal wear. Every time you use the brake pedal, you generate friction that turns into heat. Under normal conditions, that's not a problem, but on long descents in the mountains or on roads with many curves, that heat accumulates to dangerous levels. The brake pads glaze over, the discs warp, and in extreme cases, the phenomenon called brake fade occurs, where the brakes literally lose effectiveness because they are too hot. I've heard stories of drivers who descended mountain passes constantly braking and arrived at the bottom with a spongy pedal, unable to stop the car properly. Engine braking doesn't heat up, doesn't wear out, and doesn't fail. It's the most reliable tool a vehicle has to control speed without subjecting the braking system to unnecessary stress. In manual transmissions, this means gradually downshifting while going downhill, allowing engine compression to do the work. In automatics, it means using the L or numbered gear positions that many drivers completely ignore. The added benefit is fuel savings because the engine uses almost no power while decelerating. Professional drivers, especially truckers and those who drive in mountainous areas, rely on this technique constantly. They know their brakes are a limited resource that should only be used when absolutely necessary. The brake pads of a driver who uses engine braking correctly can last twice as long as those of someone who brakes all the time. It's one of those skills that, once mastered, becomes automatic and completely transforms the way you drive. The physics behind engine braking is elegant in its simplicity. When you lift your foot off the accelerator with the car in gear, the engine stops receiving fuel but continues to spin, driven by the wheels through the transmission. This unburned rotation creates natural resistance because the engine is compressing air in the cylinders without burning it, acting like a compressor that absorbs kinetic energy from the vehicle. In diesel engines, the effect is even more pronounced because their compression ratio is much higher. Large trucks even have dedicated engine brakes that artificially increase this resistance. Mastering this technique requires anticipation. You need to read the traffic ahead, foresee when you'll need to slow down, and react well in advance. Skilled drivers can cover miles in the city without touching the brake pedal, simply by modulating their speed with the accelerator and gear changes. It's a dance between engine, transmission, and physics that, once mastered, becomes second nature. Change filters before they become clogged. Filters are the silent guardians that keep the entire car system running. They don't make noise, they don't have associated warning lights, and that's why most drivers ignore them for years. But a clogged filter is like a blocked artery. It forces the entire system to work harder until something fails. The air filter is the most visible and easiest to check, but also the most underestimated. When it's clogged, the engine literally chokes trying to draw in the oxygen it needs for combustion. To compensate for this lack of air, the computer injects more fuel, which creates a rich mixture that doesn't burn completely. This incomplete combustion creates soot that adheres to pistons, valves, and combustion chambers. Over time, this buildup steals power so gradually that the driver doesn't notice it until they compare it to how the car accelerated when it was new. The fuel filter is another critical but almost invisible filter. When it becomes clogged, it reduces the pressure reaching the injectors and forces the fuel pump to work harder, overheating until it eventually burns out. Replacing a fuel pump can cost between 400 and 800 euros, while a filter costs 20. A dirty oil filter allows microscopic metal particles to circulate through the engine, acting like sandpaper on bearings, camshafts, and cylinder walls. Even the cabin air filter, which many consider an unnecessary luxury, affects performance because when it's clogged, it forces the air conditioning compressor and blower motor to work harder, consuming energy that should be used to move the car. The recommended frequency is clear. Air filter every 20,000 kilometers or annually, oil filter with every oil change without exception, and fuel filter every 40,000 kilometers or as specified by the manufacturer. The combined cost of all these filters is ridiculously low compared to the catastrophic repairs they prevent. Filtration technology has advanced enormously in recent decades. Modern air filters can capture particles as small as 5 microns, invisible to the human eye but devastating to the polished surfaces inside the engine. A microscopic grain of sand passing through the filter will act like sandpaper, circulating at thousands of revolutions per minute. Address noises immediately without delay. Cars don't suddenly break down without warning. They always, absolutely always, give warning signs. Every strange noise is a conversation your car is trying to have with you. A squeal when starting could be an auxiliary belt about to break. A clunk when going over bumps indicates a worn shock absorber or suspension mount. A constant whine that increases with speed reveals a wheel bearing that's disintegrating. A metallic click when turning points to a faulty CV joint that, if it breaks, could literally leave you stranded in the middle of the road. And yet, the most common mistake drivers make is turning up the radio to ignore these noises. It's like covering your ears while your car screams for help. Drivers who achieve extraordinary mileage have something in common: an incredibly keen ear for detecting any change in their vehicle's sound. They know their car so well that they can identify a new noise, even if it's subtle, even if it only occurs when the engine is cold, even if it disappears after warming up. And when they detect it, they act immediately. They don't put it off until next month. They don't wait to see if it gets worse. They don't convince themselves it's normal. They go to the garage, identify the source, and fix it while it's still cheap. Because that's the crucial difference. A noise addressed in time can cost 20 or 50 euros. The same noise ignored for months becomes a repair costing 1,000 or 2,000 euros because the component that was failing ended up damaging others in a chain reaction. This discipline of immediate attention is what separates preventative maintenance from emergency repairs. And believe me, emergencies always happen at the worst possible time and always cost twice as much. The human ear can detect frequency changes of just 2 Hz, which makes it an incredibly sensitive diagnostic tool if you know how to use it. Veteran mechanics develop what they call the mechanical ear, the ability to listen to a noise and triangulate its source, frequency, and urgency. A metallic knocking at low RPMs that disappears when the engine is warmed up can indicate looseness in the valve lifters. A high-pitched whistling sound that increases with RPMs indicates a vacuum leak or a worn-out turbocharger. A rhythmic squealing sound, synchronized with wheel speed, points to wheel bearings or brakes. The key is to document when the noise occurs. Only when the engine is cold. Only when turning. Does it disappear as the engine warms up? This information allows the mechanic to diagnose the problem before even opening the hood. Some drivers record the noise with their phones to show the technician, which greatly speeds up the diagnosis. Ignoring noises is like ignoring physical pain. Your body is telling you something is wrong, and masking it with painkillers won't address the underlying cause. Keep your fuel tank above a quarter full. This habit may seem excessive to many, but it has a real and measurable impact on the longevity of your fuel system. The fuel pump is designed to be submerged in fuel because the fuel itself acts as a coolant. When you constantly drive with a low tank, the pump operates partially exposed, heating up more than it should and wearing out prematurely. Furthermore, sediment, dirt particles, condensation, and micro-impurities accumulate at the bottom of any tank over time. When the fuel level is very low, the pump begins to draw in all this debris and sends it directly into the system. These particles circulate through the fuel lines, clog the filter, and can even reach the injectors, causing malfunctions. An overheated fuel pump fails prematurely, and replacing it is not only expensive but also troublesome, because in many models, it requires removing the entire tank or even lifting the rear of the car. The rule followed by professional drivers is simple. Never let your tank drop below a quarter full, ever, without exception. In cold climates, there is an additional risk. The condensation that forms on the tank walls when it is half empty can turn into ice, creating blockages or damaging components. Scheduled preventative maintenance with absolute discipline. This is the ultimate habit, the one that truly separates ordinary cars from those that become immortal. There is no magic engine, no perfect brand, no legendary manufacturing if there isn't a disciplined driver behind it doing their part. Cars that reach 500,000 kilometers or more have something in common. Their owners don't wait for the car to need maintenance. They perform it before it needs it. They don't wait for symptoms. They don't postpone checkups. They don't look for excuses to skip services. They have a maintenance schedule that they treat like a Bible. Oil changes are done on time, even if the car hasn't reached the recommended mileage. Scheduled checkups are performed without delay, even if the car seems to be running perfectly. The timing belt is changed before the maximum lifespan, not exactly at the limit. Spark plugs are replaced preventively at the established intervals. Fluids are changed even if they look fine. The difference in mindset is fundamental. These drivers see their car as a long-term investment, not a temporary expense. Every euro invested in prevention is a euro saved on emergency repairs. And the math is clear. An oil change costs 50 euros. A new engine costs 5,000. A timing belt costs 400. An engine wrecked because the belt broke costs 6,000. Brake fluid costs 20. An accident caused by brake failure is priceless. This discipline creates engines that reach 500,000 kilometers without drama, without scares, without unexpected breakdowns. Even the most modest engines, those 3-cylinder ones that many consider disposable, can achieve incredible figures if the owner is consistent. Because in the end, it's not luck or brand. It's pure discipline. It's understanding that longevity isn't bought. It's built day by day with small, correct decisions. Now you know the 13 habits that separate an average car from one that defies all expectations. They don't require advanced technical knowledge or million-dollar investments. Just discipline, consistency, and respect for the machine. Each of these habits individually may seem insignificant, but together they build something extraordinary.